All right, let's dive into something that affects, well, pretty much every single one of us. A hidden battle being waged for our minds. We're going to get into how our daily digital habits might be fundamentally changing the way we actually think.
So many spiritual traditions, like this verse from the Quran, really emphasize the incredible honor and dignity that humanity has been given. And that honor, it's almost always tied to our unique ability for reason, for intellect, for deep, meaningful thought.
And that, right there, is the big question for today. What happens when the very tools we built to connect us and make our lives easier start to quietly chip away at that core human ability?
So what exactly does a silent cognitive war even look like? Well, it's not fought with traditional weapons. It's a war for our attention. The battlefield is the very screen you're probably looking at right now, and the prize is our ability to just think clearly.
The main idea here is that this cognitive warfare isn't some big dramatic event. It's more like a chronic illness, a slow, steady erosion of our focus that we might not even notice until the symptoms are really bad. It's gradually stealing our capacity for deep, critical thinking.
So how is this actually happening? Well, our source material points to three main battlefronts in this war. Let's break down each of these digital cognitive crises one by one.
First up, we've got a phenomenon that researchers are actually calling TikTok brain. And no, that's not just a catchy phrase they made up. It's a real term for how being constantly exposed to these short, super fast-paced videos can literally shorten our attention spans, making it so much harder to focus on anything that requires real concentration.
And here you can see this incredible contrast. On one side, you have modern science, with studies confirming a serious negative impact on our attention. And on the other, you have spiritual traditions like Islam, which emphasize tafakkur, this idea of deep, prolonged contemplation. These two things are going in completely opposite directions.
And if you want to understand just how big this problem is, get this. A survey done by TikTok itself found that half of its users felt that videos longer than just 1 minute were stressful. That one piece of data tells you everything you need to know about how our brains are being rewired to need constant, rapid-fire stimulation.
Okay, crisis number 2, the social media dopamine cycle. These platforms are designed very, very intentionally to hijack our brain's natural reward system. Every like, every share, every little notification, it's a tiny hit of dopamine, and it creates this addictive loop that keeps us coming back for more instant gratification.
And what's wild is that this totally modern scientific finding, it has an ancient echo. While a major study in Nature Communications shows that, yes, our collective attention spans are getting shorter, ancient wisdom, like in this Quranic verse, has been warning us for centuries about becoming a slave to our own desires, our hawa nafsu.
And the third crisis is probably the newest one, cognitive offloading. This is basically what happens when we start relying on tools like AI to do our thinking for us. We're outsourcing our mental heavy lifting. And, just like a muscle you never use, our own cognitive abilities start to get weaker.
And the evidence is already starting to roll in. There's a study coming out in 2025 that's already linking frequent AI use directly to a drop in critical thinking skills. From a spiritual point of view, this is a huge deal because it challenges the idea of the intellect, the aql, as a divine trust, a gift that's supposed to be actively used.
So, this leads to a really important question. If the damage is so significant, why isn't it more obvious to us? Why aren't we all walking around feeling this mental erosion happening in real time? Well, there are 4 main reasons. First, the change is just too slow to notice. It's that classic boiling frog story. Second, our brains are literally fighting against an addiction to that dopamine hit. A big one is digital literacy. Most of us were never really taught how to build a kind of cognitive immunity to this stuff. And finally, there's the illusion of productivity. AI tools make us feel super efficient, and that feeling masks our growing dependency.
Okay, so we've laid out the problem in pretty stark terms. But the goal here isn't just to point out the issue, it's to look at solutions. And this brings us to a really interesting concept called the NeuroQuranic counteroffensive, which tries to blend modern neuroscience with timeless wisdom. So here's the proposed game plan. To fight back against TikTok brain, the solution uses things like alpha and theta brainwave training, basically techniques to help guide your brain into a state of deep focus, the total opposite of frantic scrolling. For the social media problem, it's about building a healthier reward system based on actual achievement. And to counter our dependency on AI, the goal is active neural engagement through practices like memorizing the Quran.
So how does this actually work in practice? Well, the source talks about an app that puts these ideas into action. For example, frequency-based spaced repetition. I know, it sounds really complex. But all this is a smart way to remind you of things at the exact moment your brain is about to forget them, which makes the memory way stronger. It even has things like a mindful recalibration mode, which is kind of like hitting a mental reset button to reboot your brain after a day full of digital chaos.
Now, this kind of technology might be new, but the principles driving it, they are ancient and they are seriously well proven. The evidence for this kind of cognitive training isn't just theory. It's been demonstrated for centuries.
I mean, according to the research, these methods can lead to some incredible results. We're talking about a 3-fold increase in memory retention compared to the usual ways we try to learn things. That is a massive jump in cognitive performance.
And the historical proof is just so compelling. For centuries, Huffaz, these are people who memorize the entire Quran, have shown what the human brain is capable of, including this massively increased memory capacity and focus. The goal of new tech like this is to take the principles they've used for so long and make those same cognitive benefits accessible to all of us.
So, this really brings us to a critical moment, a choice we all have to make. The path we're currently on could lead to a future where deep thinking is basically a lost art. But the other path is to actively fight back, to use every tool we have, both ancient and modern, to reclaim control of our own minds.
And this Quranic verse just captures the heart of that choice perfectly. It puts the power and the responsibility for change right back on us, on the individual. External things won't get better until we make the internal effort to change ourselves first. And that really leaves us with one final powerful question. In this age of cognitive warfare, the choice ultimately is yours. Are you going to actively work to reclaim and strengthen your mind, or are you going to passively let it be reprogrammed by the algorithms all around you?